What's up, family, and welcome back to the channel. This is an incredibly busy week. I have a lot of things going on. Of course, you know that we're experimenting with streaming or restreaming rather content on the channel, and hopefully within a few weeks we'll be ready to go 24/7. As of now, we've just dropped in a few days every now and then. Just to kind of test it out, see how people are feeling, and just to make sure that it's clear and that it's actually, bringing some value. Outside of that, this week I am doing I'm adding some new certifications to my resume. So I am definitely deeply involved in that. Of course, we are promoting and pushing my newest book, or my latest book, rather, Christ Held Up. I am also working on finishing up another book that we're hoping to have out by the end of the year. And possibly even before then, depending on how I feel. I'm hyper productive for a reason, and so it is definitely on purpose. But as I've shared before, me kind of leaving what some people call the faith was also a realization for me, or an epiphany. That I had wasted so much of my life and had undermined my own capacity and autonomy, and so because of that, I'm just in this phase that I'm really hyper productive. Everything that I can do, I'm doing my best to do, and it's my way of maximizing opportunities to modify outcomes. Now, I don't say that everybody needs to do this, but this is just who I am. All right. So I think I've said enough. That was just kind of me rambling a little bit. As you can see, I am back standing up today, which I do like these stand ups. Ooh, that's a thing. But today I want to have a little conversation with you about some of the more harmful religious responses that people can give that we're often not honest about the harm that those things do. So before we jump into this conversation, please be a good friend and like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that alert notification bell. Consider joining our community, whether you do so on Patreon, through YouTube, or on our Discord. And also consider volunteering for our community if you really want to make a difference. Volunteering is the way to do it. And you know what? While I'm there, even if you're not volunteering for the community we're building, or this channel here, find a way to get involved. Don't just be a mouthpiece on the sidelines. We really need all hands at bat. And so whether you're volunteering here or somewhere else, if you really believe that the work that we do is valuable, find one of these places to get connected and help, and volunteer. Almost want to put up the Kevin Hart meme. Help me. Don't just watch. Help. That's good, right? Yeah. Okay, volunteer. Oh, and check out our merch. We have some dope merch. Every you buying our merch, obviously you get something to wear and just kind of spread the message, and then also we get a little bit more funding for the work that we do. So it is a win-win situation. Okay, so let's jump into this. I want to kind of talk about some of the harmful, or the more harmful responses, or insidiously harmful responses that often are provided in religious context. And many of these I've heard firsthand. And of course, I started this video ultimately as a short last week. And wow, have I been overwhelmed by the responses, because whew, when I was a believer, I thought that I was the only person who felt that these responses were harmful. I knew they were harmful when they were said to me. I knew they weren't helpful. I knew they only created more frustration and anxiety and trepidation on my behalf. But I felt that at that time that maybe there was just something wrong with me. Other people were being comforted by these things. Other people were being encouraged by these things. And this is probably one of the biggest insidious lies of the church that even secular communities and atheist communities buy into. And of course, y'all know that I've not been silent on this. And that's this idea that the church and these church platitudes somehow gives people comfort. And the reality is that it doesn't. When we actually interrogate these things, what we find is that these things don't give anybody comfort, but none of the people inside of the echo chamber have the safety to say so. And so, it's amazing to me how even, people on the secular communities can look at that and say, no, they must really be getting comfort. No, interrogate this thing. So, to kind of help you do some interrogation, I'm going to share some things. Some of these are things that have been, um, things that I've heard, and many of you shared some things in the comments on the shorts. I just want to dive a little deeper here. So the first one is, and it's probably the one that even as atheists and or skeptics, non-believers, secular folk, whatever you may be, I think the best way, humanist is the best way that I like to say it, just people centric. Humanist is often people first, and I have to wrestle with that. And on the only reason I have to wrestle with that is because I know we kind of exist on a spectrum, and we're moving one way or another. And so, while right now, people first is definitely something we need. Vis-a-vis God first, or tradition first, or even forefathers first. It's like, present people alive, current day folk first, for sure. But I do believe, or I do think rather, maybe hypothesize that as we continue to kind of evolve as a species, that we will become less speciesist, I guess, in this pack. Like we kind of got this human exceptionalism thing going on. I think as we continue to evolve, we may move from people first to just people centric, and so I just kind of want to beat everybody there. We're on people centric. We do share this planet with other species. And I think as we continue to evolve, our relationship with those other species will also continue to evolve, and will eventually bring us in face to face with some very uncomfortable challenges, which some of us we're already there. It just doesn't have the actual groundwork under it that it needs to exist, and to exist solidly. That's just the best way I can say it without really offending people. But you can already see those conversations kind of going there. Whether it's people like, oh no, maybe we shouldn't eat meat, or oh no, maybe we shouldn't have pets. And right now these are like minor things that they're kind of like minor conversations. They're not into they're not on the major platform yet. And it's all kind of fringe for the most part. But I have a sneaky suspicion that as we continue to progress and move forward, those conversations are going to become more and more realistic, and will likely represent the next phase of the moral zeitgeist of humanity. Now, I don't know that for sure. Social science is not necessarily a predictive science. It is a reflective science, and we can make some predictions, but it's not a hard science. All right, so I said a lot, but let's jump into this. The first one that we hear a lot is, "I'm praying for you." All right, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. I mean, you could have literally said any combination of words, and it probably would have meant more than "I'm praying for you." Oftentimes, what I hear when people say, "I'm praying for you," I hear either, "I don't understand your problem to be able to have any type of insight into it. I don't have the capacity to help you in any kind of way," or "this is just the thing that I'm used to saying." And either way, that's not helpful for me. This statement can often feel dismissive to those struggling, implying that their issues can be resolved by divine intervention rather than practical support. And that's ultimately what you're doing when you do that. You are robbing yourself of an opportunity to learn how to support somebody. And that's, again, this is why I kind of like want to raise the flag on these things, because we are, but those of us who know and are sitting back and feeling like, well, maybe we're not qualified to investigate and interrogate this. We are, in a sense, obviously they make their own choices, but in a sense, we are condemning people to think that something is support that is not. And if you want to talk about the rise of mental illness, which I don't even know if that's an accurate word, rise. We just have more tools to diagnose, and more people have more access to the tools. I don't know if it's fair to say that it's been a rise, but I will say that the church environment has probably been highly contributive to it. And I mean, I think that's something we should think about. If you're pretending that something is supporting you that's actually not supporting you, if you're pretending that something's encouraging you that's actually not encouraging you. Well, let me put it this way. If you're pretending like something, like you're eating something, but you're actually not eating something, then you're actually not getting the value you claim to have. Just because you're saying you're getting the value doesn't mean you're getting it. And this is what happens with a lot of people in church. And of course, just this idea of I'm praying for you, this can come off incredibly insincere, especially if the person offering prayer does not follow up with tangible help, leading to feelings of abandonment and helplessness, which I've often found this to be incredibly odd because even the scripture says faith without works is dead, you know. But I'm praying for you. And of course, just thinking about the social impacts, this can reinforce a divide between believers and non-believers, making the latter feel misunderstood and alienated from their support networks. So, especially when you're saying this to a non-believer, it's like, yeah, I'm praying for you. I'm doing witchcraft for you, is what non-believers hear, right? And so we put that shit in the same category as witchcraft. All right, next one. God doesn't make mistakes. I just realized there's another video I want to do too. And I'm almost tempted to rabbit trail into it in this, but I don't think it has anything to do with this video, so I won't. But I will try to recall these notes for myself. Um, and this one is just more advice. And I guess because we're in this, here's some advice that I want to give people. Um, and I will likely do a whole video on this. But nothing you know about your experience in your life gives you enough information to make it safe for you to assume about others. And actually, we did this series in How to Human. And the biggest thing that I am an advocate of is treat every human being like you've never met them before, if you've never met them before. And don't give yourself permission to know anything about them that you do not. Now, this seems irrelevant, but I promise you it's relevant because most of the worst advice I've ever heard came from people who did not take the advice that I just gave. It is absolutely impossible to accurately advise anybody if you haven't actually interrogated who they are and what they're about and what they're working on. Someone gave me some advice, and actually, this happens in my life a lot. I think this may be one of the reasons people think I'm a jackass because I am one of those people where you kind of have to be qualified to give me advice. And I am definitely one of those it's the thought that counts type of people. So I actually think about the thoughts that led you to the advice. I can use one that's not offensive to anyone because I have a few that would be offensive to people. Some of you have done it. Some people who are close to me have done it. But I had someone, um, reach out to me and basically try to give me advice about changing my channel name. And, I'm not against, I'm always like, oh, let me check this out. The guy said, I love your content, but it's your name isn't viral. Your channel's name isn't viral. If I had to tell my friends to look up this name, they'd have a hard time finding it. And because it's not viral, they wouldn't find you. Now, my first response was, ooh, let me check this out. Let me verify. Now, mind you, here's some facts that I know about me. If you type my name in Google, I will be the first 15 results. If you type my name in YouTube, I will be the first 15 results. If you type my name in Amazon, I will be the first 5 results. Now, I could assume that this brother's advice was in good faith. The problem is he didn't verify his own advice. Before he gave the advice, he could have typed in my name somewhere and see what the results are. The fact that he gave the advice without verifying if the advice was accurate lets me know that the only thing for him that mattered was his opinion. And what he didn't realize is because his opinion was unfounded and unverified, it actually revealed a hint of his own biases. Dare I even say racism? But that's much more common than you would think. You have no idea how many people try to give me advice before interrogating who I am. Google me, motherfuckers. You know, I'm not an elitist by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't just bend down and bow down for folk, you know. Nor do I just accept, oh well, I was just trying to be nice. I'm like, try harder. That's that's my thing. Okay. So the point is, if you're going to give advice to people and you want to be able to give advice in good faith, know what the hell you're talking about and be able to demonstrate it. Otherwise, it's probably not going to work out for you well. And that's really why I like to give that advice, is because the whole purpose of giving advice is because you want to help people, not fluff your own ego. But I know more people who give advice to fluff their ego than to actually help others. You see how that's relevant to this? So the second one was God doesn't make mistakes. How many of you have heard that? And the sad thing is, this is used in so many times. It can be used for something as small as not winning the spelling bee to something as large or something as heavy as somebody being assaulted or murdered or dying from cancer or a child being born with an incredible disability. God doesn't make mistakes. This invalidates people's feelings and experiences, making them question their own perception of their struggles. And I really want you to wrestle with the damage of that. That if you're experiencing something and it's hurting you, your child is born with a disease and this thing is hurting you, your a relative is dying of a disease, it's hurting you, someone you love was assaulted and this is hurting you and you're trying to wrestle with it, and then somebody comes along and says God doesn't make mistakes, which now means this harmful thing that happened in your life was on purpose, was intentional, was allowed, enabled, supported. And your belief system encourages you to count that as joy. Do you understand how emotionally taxing that is? It can lead to internal conflict and confusion about a person's worth and, of course, the reality of their situation. It can cause significant distress by implying that their suffering is intentional and a part of a divine plan, which can lead to feelings of hopelessness and resentment. Because if it's part of a plan which is divine, then there's nothing I can do about it. Why should I seek justice if this was God's plan? Hello. You have no idea how many black churches preach to black communities that slavery was God's divine plan. And so that we should be grateful that we went through it. Hello. The statement also hinders meaningful communication as it shuts down the conversation about real solutions and coping mechanisms, isolating the person in need. All right. And I'm pulling this stuff out of church playbooks. Okay. I'm praying for you. God doesn't make mistakes. I am showing you that all of these are futile platitudes. Actually, they're worse than futile. They're harmful. They're harmful. God has never failed. He never failed me yet. This was definitely a popular one when I was growing up. God has never failed. God has never lost a battle. God is only when God is He's victorious. The train of his robe fills the temple, because the longer the robe is, that's the how many battles you've won. This is what we used to preach. God has never failed. God has never failed. I mean, yikes. Okay? Forget me playing what some people call the race card. I don't know. I don't understand how me talking about my experiences as a black man, especially when I typically don't blame anybody for those experiences. I talk about them from a historical and sociological perspective, but I still get accused of playing a race card. It's funny. But instead of going that direction, I'll go with something that's more biblically relevant. That in this case, God has a chosen people, a people that are apparently, according to scripture, very important to him, i.e., chosen, you know. And yet, the Holocaust happened. God has never failed? What? But I don't even got to go there. God created Adam. God created Eve. Weak damn one has to kick them the fuck out. God has never failed. God looks down on earth in Genesis, same damn book in Genesis, says, dang, the people I created, perfect creator, people I created are messing up really, really badly. I regret that I made them. God has never failed? Yeah, I don't see, this isn't grounded in any sense of reality. And just like I'm praying for you, and just like God doesn't make mistakes, this absolutely forces a person to ignore reality. You literally have to convince a person that what they are actually experiencing and what they are actually seeing and what they are actually going through is not real. That nope, when someone dies, that's not a failure of God. It's a part of his plan. This is obviously gaslighting. Okay. And it suggests that any perceived failure are actually the individual's fault. Because I know that's where some of you wanted to go as soon as I mentioned the Holocaust. Well, that wasn't God. No, of course not. It was one of God's people. Here you go. Let's do it this way. It was one of God's creations. Okay. I don't have to create a dog. As a matter of fact, I don't know how to create a dog. But if I have a dog, if that dog belongs to me, and it goes out and bites somebody, I am held accountable. You can hold me to better accountability than you can hold God. Yeah, the standards fail. But this obviously, the other side of this stick that people don't realize is that when you're using this adage of God has never failed, what you are doing is you are creating the space to increase self blame and and guilt. Well, see, if God isn't the one who failed here, then I must have failed somehow. It can amplify feelings of inadequacy and failure, as the individual might believe that they're the reasons for their struggles. You know, I'm not against them, coming to those understandings in some ways. And then it can prevent the person from seeking, and here's the big part, or accepting help from others, reinforcing a sense of isolation and unsupported suffering. Especially when you combine God has never failed with God doesn't make mistakes, so that there is a divine plan here. So even that God has never failed, it's like, then even if I didn't do anything wrong, God wants me to get something out of this. God did this for a reason. Maybe God did this because he didn't want me doing business with these people. Or maybe God did this because he didn't want me being friends with these people. This is not a healthy way to engage life. Another popular one is this is just a test. God is testing you. God is testing your faith. God wants to make sure that you're going to stay close to your deliverance. Um, Framing suffering as a test can create immense pressure to pass by enduring without complaint or critique, leading to increased stress and anxiety. Because please understand, being able to complain and critique are stress relievers. If you can't complain about what you're going through because you believe this is some type of divine test, you are absolutely driving yourself emotionally unhealthy, unstable, I dare say. This can also trivialize the person's pain and suffering, making them feel that their struggles are unimportant and just merely a challenge to overcome. And this can lead to a lack of empathy from others, as they may view the person's struggles as a necessary hurdle rather than a situation requiring support and intervention. I hope you're starting to see a common thread with some of these things that I'm highlighting. And that ultimately, if my belief is that my supernatural imaginary friend has your back, then I don't feel the need to have your back. I.e., I feel like saying I am praying for you is just as or more effective than me actually trying to support you. And so when you're looking at a world and wondering why do so many people feel unsupported, I want you to pay attention to some of these things. One that I got often was don't try to figure it out. And as a highly analytical person, oh, this one drove me nearly bonkers. This discourages critical thinking and problem solving, fostering a sense of helplessness and dependence on external, often spiritual solutions. And the thing was always don't try to figure it out. God has already worked it out. God has already worked this thing out. If you're trying to figure it out, you don't trust God. And a lot of this stuff, I've shared some of this in one of my previous videos about the evolution of my theology and about how the Bible sometimes enabled my poverty, but you get into this place where it's just like somehow even trying to understand is offensive. And of course, that actually doesn't come from scripture, because the Bible does say in all of your getting, you should get understanding. That comes from people who absolutely know that what they have grounded themselves on is unfounded, and they want to discourage other people from figuring it out. You see how that works? So I mean, like, I like to just bring nuance to the conversation. Stuff like this isolates people from support networks, as it implies their problems are beyond comprehension and assistance, reducing the likelihood of receiving practical help. So people say stuff like, this is just one of those things that only God can do. Only God can do this, and God's ways are beyond our ways. We can't comprehend God. You think you can figure out what God got going on? Cut that shit out your life. I'm telling you. Maybe there's some hidden sin. Anybody ever got this one before? You're going through something. And again, this can be stuff as small as, not getting the job you wanted, to something as major as somebody dying or your spouse cheating on you. Some well-intentioned person is going to say, well, maybe there's some hidden sin in your life that God sees and nobody else sees. And, you know, this, of course, induces feelings of guilt and shame, as it suggests that their suffering is a punishment for some unknown wrongdoing. And then just imagine how righteous that makes their God character if he's punishing people for things they didn't know that they were doing wrong. But hey, that's actually book of Genesis chapter what, 2, 3? God punishes Adam and Eve for doing something that they wouldn't have known was right or wrong because they hadn't yet eaten of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So, obviously, this leads to anxiety, self doubt, and the person may obsess over identifying and rectifying this supposed sin as opposed to actually wrestling with the variables that did impact this outcome in their life. It can create a barrier between the individual and their community, as they now may feel ashamed and withdraw out of fear of judgment and condemnation, which I have seen happen quite a bit. But maybe there's not hidden sin. Maybe there's some hidden purpose. You ever heard that one before? Which can often be invalidating, suggesting that their pain is justified and necessary for some unknown reason, which can be, completely unsettling and demoralizing. It causes feelings of anger and resentment towards the notion that their suffering is purposeful. And this is actually a big deal. Dr. Anthony Penn talks about this quite often. But this I because and he does talk about this as it pertains to the black community, because we've come to the place that where suffering is the thing that has the purpose. Whew. Suffering is something that is supposed to be survived, endured, rather than something that is to be alleviated. And obviously, again, this keeps people from offering actual practical help, as they may believe the suffering is beneficial for or necessary for a greater good. One that I got often, and I still get this one: you were chosen to handle it. Even believers who know that I'm an atheist now, many of them will try to reach out to me and try to prophesy to me and say, "Brother, God chose you for this course." What the hell is wrong with you, man? But you were chosen to handle it. I mean, this places undue pressure on the individual to endure their suffering with grace and strength. I was chosen for this. Which, it really does lead to the Superman or Superwoman syndrome, whatever. It makes you feel like you have to take on things more than you actually want to take on, that you actually need to take on, because you're not actually critically engaging you taking on it. Someone else just said you were chosen. And I don't know if you understand this, but that's not a good way to come to an understanding of something. Not just somebody saying something to you. Don't do that in your life. These common religious responses can have profound psychological, emotional, and social impacts on individuals, particularly those who are already vulnerable. And these are the ones that I'm really trying to get people to be mindful of, because they often invalidate the person's experiences. It discourages proactive problem solving and can lead to feelings of isolation and resentment. It's crucial to approach people in tough times with empathy, understanding, and practical support, rather than platitudes that may unintentionally cause harm. I challenge each of you to interrogate your own experiences and see if you can identify any of these harmful practices in your own life. I think we'd be surprised. And I like to highlight stuff like this because the church should no longer be able to hide as something helpful when it is causing so much harm. And at this moment, like, the harm can't be hidden anymore. This is something we can talk about. This is something we can call out. It's time for us to do that. Um, I share stuff like this really in hopes that the secular community would finally stop pandering to bad faith claims. We should do our best to demonstrate that this dog doesn't have a leg to stand on, and there was never any good reason to believe. It's time to expose the man behind the curtain. Because as I stated earlier, there are people who are ultimately psychologically tormenting and traumatizing themselves in these particular echo chambers, because bandwagon ideology still has the majority of the human species believing that the majority is right, even when what the majority is doing is harmful or self-destructive. You know, there was a saying when I was growing up that says common sense isn't that common. I don't think the phraseology of that actually drives the point home. Until we evolve as a species, I think a better way to say that is that the most common sense is likely not sense at all. And so, yes, just because something is popular, just because some people say it a lot, doesn't mean it's actually true. And if we care for other people and the liberation of their minds, then we should wrestle with these things. I hope I've said something that maybe sparked some thoughts in your own mind. Hope I've said something that has brought some value and all that good stuff. I love y'all. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, consider joining our community, consider volunteering in our community, check out our merch, And I think that's all I have. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful.